good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. And this morning, I'm very pleased to have with me as my guest Derek Foran, who's a partner at Steptoe. Derek, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Richard. Glad to be here.
So, Derek, you have one of the funniest degrees I've ever seen or come across in my interviews. And I see that you have a graduate or some sort of graduate degree in Irish folklore.
That's right.
So, tell me a little bit about how you decided to study that and what does that even entail?
Well, let's see. It's kind of a long. Well, it's not that long a story. I was 21 years old. I graduated from college. I grew up in Dublin, Ireland, and
Mhm.
graduated from college. And the economy stank. There was no jobs in Ireland at the time. This is all pre-Celtic Tiger. I was working night shifts in a gas station for $3.50 an hour. And there were six people in the gas station that had college degrees. That's how bad the economy was at the time. And so I needed to find something to do. And I was always really interested in anthropology and folklore and stories and all of that stuff. And the University College Dublin, or UCD as it's called, started a program for folks who wanted to study Irish folklore at a graduate level.
Huh.
It was a one-year program. And so, not having anything to do and wanting to keep myself busy and off the streets, I signed up for the program. Yeah,
Huh.
it
And
was.
what
It
ki-
was
what is it? I mean, what is Irish folklore? What is
well,
it?
folklore is a branch of, it's a branch of anthropology, right? And so it's about oral traditions. It's about the wisdom that gets passed down orally as opposed to in writing. So it's stories, it's songs, it's superstitions.
Huh.
It's all sorts of stuff, and it turns out that in the early part of the 20th century, the Irish government, because they were trying to gain their independence from Britain, spent a lot of money on folklorists, training folklorists to go out to the West Coast and interview all these people who still spoke Irish and who were dying off, and they wrote down all the stories that these people told them, and they stuck them in a room at University College Dublin, whereupon it was forgotten about for decades.
Huh.
It turns out that that's one of the great folklore manuscript libraries in the world. It turned out to
Huh.
be.
Oh, that's
So
so.
it was absolutely fascinating, and
Huh.
people laugh, and I get why people would laugh at it. But I happen to think studying folklore is fantastic training to be a lawyer,
Huh.
especially a trial lawyer, the kind of work that we do. Because what do we do at the end of the day? We tell stories, not
Yeah.
stories in the sense that it's fiction, stories in the sense that it has to have a beginning, middle, and an end. It's got to have pathos. It's got to have ethos. It's got to have all the things that we talk about. So I think studying folklore was actually a brilliant training to do what I do in the future.
That is
Not that I
really,
not
really.
that I had law in mind at the time. It just turned out to be that way.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Had you heard most of those stories before growing up in Ireland, or these are things you've
Oh,
never
no, no,
heard?
no. I mean, you obviously you're familiar with some of the great myths and legends, St. Patrick and all that stuff, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
this is more nitty gritty. This is more
Huh.
nitty gritty. And what was fascinating about it was Irish folklore. The head of the program was a Swede, a guy called Hsu Untied, a very famous folklorist.
Huh.
He spoke 8 different languages,
Huh.
including Irish, which I did not speak. Most
Hmm.
kids in Dublin growing up in the 70s and 80s don't know how to speak Irish. They speak English. So this guy was an absolutely fascinating individual. And
Huh.
had a lot of fun. There was three of us in the program.
That's amazing.
Some total of three people. And one of them was a farmer in his 50s who had 7 kids. And the other was a young woman from California who turned out to be my future wife. So,
No, no
yeah,
way.
yeah.
That is hilarious. So that was a doubly good reason to have taken that to get that degree.
Exactly, exactly. That's right. That's right.
I need to interview her next.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, no, I wouldn't recommend it.
so let me ask you: were all the classes? So even though the folklore was recorded orally, were there any oral recordings that were made? Did you listen to anything, or was it all written down?
There was a lot of tapes as well, and there was a huge part of the program that was dedicated to collecting children's folklore. Children tell stories all the time.
Hmm.
Just think of I don't know. Where did you grow up, Richard?
I grew up in California.
I guarantee you there's some graveyard near where you lived that the kids thought was haunted, or some
Yeah,
place that's folklore. That's
yeah,
folklore.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so there was a huge effort on the part of the folklorists back then to collect children's folklore from kids in Dublin. and it hadn't yet. A lot of that work hadn't yet been transcribed. So a big part of what I did was actually go through a lot of that tape and try to get it transcribed. It was absolutely brilliant experience.
Did
If I
they?
if I hadn't turned out to be a lawyer, I would have been a manuscript person or a librarian of some kind. You just stick me in a room with a bunch of smelly, musty books, and I'm happy as Larry. That's what this place was like.
Okay, well now this seems like a good segue to tell me how you decided to go to law school. You're studying folklore. You met your wife. It all seems good. You had a good time. What made you decide to even go to law school then?
So I applied for a green card. I was 22, 23 at the time, and there was a green card program put together by a senator from Massachusetts at the time called Morrison.
Hmm.
And the intention, there was a lot of illegal Irish immigrants in the United States at the time. Kids, from college would get a vacation, permission to go on vacation into the States, and they'd just stay and they'd work in construction sites. And so the intention was to clean up the number of illegal immigrants in the United States at the time. But the loophole that they forgot to close was that any Irish citizen could apply for one. And there was a flood of applications. If my memory serves, there was something like 300,000 applications for something like 30 or 40,000 green cards. This is a country of 3.5 million people. 300,000 is like 10% of the population.
Wow.
And they literally held a lottery to determine who got a green card. And I got a green card, and I moved to the United States, and with my then girlfriend from California that I met in the Irish folklore program, and lived in Haight-Ashbury, and grew my hair long and did all the things that kids who have long hair and live in the Haight-Ashbury do. That was a lot of fun. And
Wow.
then I became a father. I became a young father.
Huh.
I was a young father. I became a father when I was 25 years old. And, at that stage, you kind of have to get your act together. And, you have the money in your pocket is no longer beer vouchers. And I got to figure out a way to raise a family here in California. And I'd always thought about the law. And I've been working in various back office jobs in small law firms in San Francisco. And some of the lawyers that I worked with were very encouraging to me. And so I took the LSAT and, did better than I expected. And my intention at the time was to go to night school, Golden Gate or USF, and that was the scope of my ambition. Not that there's anything wrong with night school, by the way. I know many great lawyers that went to night school, but doors started to open up that I didn't realize would be open to me, and so I applied to Cornell, and they accepted and gave me a decent financial aid package. So I toddled off with 2 kids in tow to Cornell.
Wow.
Borrowing more money than I ever thought I'd see in my life at the time. You think you're taking this huge risk, but it's worked out for me. I've had a really satisfying career. I've been able to work with lots of great people, work lots of great cases, try a few cases. It's been a ton of fun. Don't regret it.
Interesting. Was when you got to law school, did it feel like it was a duck to water? Like this is such a natural fit for you, or what did
No.
you think?
I was terrified. I was natural fit. I mean, I went from closing bars and pool halls in San Francisco down at night to closing the library at Cornell down at night. I was borrowing a crazy amount of money. I had 2 kids in tow. I wasn't there to mess around.
Yeah, right.
I worked my tail off.
Huh.
Did it feel natural? I don't know. I mean, it was a progression. I mean, I definitely enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it from the start.
Yeah.
I did the challenge. I like law because it's, again, when you do what I do, it's a combination of sort of intellectual curiosity and, a certain macho, it's like a boxing match, when you get into these trials. There's a lot of cursing, I like it's a combination of a lot of different things that appeals to my personality, I think.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a litigator? Did you consider
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I went to law school to do the things that lawyers do on TV.
Yeah.
I wanted to yell, "You can't handle the truth" at witnesses. I actually did that, by the way, on the record one time.
Oh,
Yeah.
funny. Interesting. So what kind of
I wanted to be a trial lawyer. And very, very fortunate to work with some of the great trial lawyers of over the last 50 years. Morrison and Forster was there for 20 years before I came to Steptoe. Tried cases with Jim Brosnahan.
Oh yeah.
Tried cases with Arturo Gonzalez. Tried cases with Jim Bennett in particular. Is a very special mentor of mine. Linda Shostak. These are some of the great trial lawyers of the last 50 years. I had an amazing training.
That is pretty amazing. So what kind of cases do you litigate now? All kinds? What is your kind of your
all kinds? I especially like business to business disputes. I'll do, of course I'll do whatever clients need, class actions, consumer facing stuff, but business to business, this commercial disputes are my real forte, where there's a lot of messy facts in dispute. Just got done trying a case on behalf of Lattice Semiconductor up in the District of Oregon. absolutely fantastic case. Had false advertising claims, negligence, breach of contract, fraud claims. It was a 3-week jury trial. The other side sought hundreds of millions of dollars. They were represented by Paul Hastings of White and Case. It was a real smackdown.
Hmm.
And the jury returned a verdict in an hour and 50 minutes in Lattice's favor, and that hour and 50 minutes included lunch. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that, Richard. So I remember it's the E.G. and Carroll, the second defamation case that went to a jury trial a few months ago in the fall of last year.
Yeah.
I remember reading the jury came back in 2.5 hours in that case, and I remember thinking at the time, I want to beat that number. I want to beat that number. An hour and 50 minutes, including lunch, is extraordinary after a 3-week trial. I'm very proud of that.
How many trials do you estimate you've tried, do you think?
I mean, 20.
Yeah, yeah. And how often do you get to go to trial these days?
You know, it's spotty. Sometimes it's a couple of times a year. Sometimes you don't go to trial. Obviously the pandemic was a big event in terms of pushing trials out. So there's been times where you might not get into a trial for 3 years, and there's other times where you just roll out of trials. It really just depends. So all about what the client needs, right?
Well, you've obviously had a very successful career. Could you see yourself ever doing anything else? I don't know, be an in-house lawyer, teach. I don't know. Could you see yourself doing anything else?
When I think about in-house, I mean, I don't know. I like the independence of being a partner in a law firm. I like the separation that it gives you.
Yeah.
Where I do feel like that you can give more colder, more sober assessments to a client than if you're it necessarily in-house. I like the independence of being able to pick up pro bono work. I've had extraordinarily lucky to work with firms that have been very supportive of some huge pro bono cases that I've taken over time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's that appealing to me. The judge thing. I mean, someone said to me one time, "Why call the balls and strikes when you can play the game?" I don't know how attractive that is to me. I like what I do, and I plan on doing it for as long as I like it. And clients will hire me. I mean, I might own a bookshop. I might go own a bookshop or open a bar, or work in a gas station again or something. I don't know.
Well, Derek, it's been a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed hearing about Irish folklore and particularly how you get to use it in your career. If you do decide to open that gas station, you'll definitely have to come back and tell me about it.
Absolutely, Richard. It was a pleasure. Nice to see you.
This is Richard Hsu and Derek Foran. Thanks.